Welcome back to Just Chattin, and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. And yes, today we have some cat company. Audie has been a little more forthcoming in the videos because the weather is good and that puts him in a good mood. So yes, our photobomb baby is back. Well, I have an interesting topic for this evening. At least I think it's interesting. And it's one that most of us have been kind of sort of following for a while. But it is markeling. And we all know that Nutmeg tires of people, dumps them, pretends they don't exist, and then occasionally comes back to yank on the string again. But because we have a new member of the Markled, I thought we'd take a look at the people she has markled, why she has markled them, and when circumstance have made them more desirable acquaintances, they've been sort of reabsorbed into her friend flock. So, we're going to take a quick break for the intro, 22 seconds, and then we'll be back. Audie, turn around, let them see you. All right, there. Oh, he showed us his entire face. All right, but he's had enough. All right, we'll be back. So, the newest member in the ranks of the Markled is Vogue editor Edward Enninful. And he was apparently very recently added to this rather prestigious group when Nutmeg wanted Vogue to do a cover spread on her business interests, presumably the As Ever products, and they said no. How dare they? So he is on the bad list now. And we're going to pick this up later, talk about that relationship and where it is currently and where it's likely to go in the future. But I thought I would set the stage for this by talking about past Marklees. I'm not sure that's actually a word. It should be. People who have been markled. And we need to start, first of all, with Nikki Pretty. And Nikki Pretty was Nutmeg's childhood friend. And Nikki was probably among the first to have been markled. Interestingly enough, she was probably the most significant friendship in Markle's childhood. So this is from Tom Bower's book, Revenge. Nikki Pretty witnessed the consequence. She was tough, too. If you rubbed her up the wrong way, she'd make it known with the silent treatment. There was a time when we were about 7, and I'd collected a bunch of insects. She didn't want to play with them. We spent 2 hours sitting at opposite ends of the garden with our backs to each other in silence. I'd always be the first to apologize. I just wanted to be besties again. She was stubborn. She digs her heels in the ground. Now, it's very interesting that we look at this in the context of a childhood spat, but this is her pattern. And it was apparently established by the time she was 7 years old. You don't give her her own way, and you cease to exist. And we've seen that pattern since, repeatedly. Yes, Nikki actually got permanently markled. According to Nikki, it was when Nutmeg got the job on Suits, and she just came back to her old stomping grounds a tad too full of herself, didn't have time for anyone else. And, if she decided she wanted to see Nikki, Nikki was supposed to be available. Meanwhile, she wasn't taking Nikki's calls. So, yeah. And if you want the whole story, please read Tom Bower's book, because it's all in there. So Nikki was the first to go. And later, we've seen this pattern repeat. I'm just hitting the high points, the more conspicuous people in Nutmeg's life who got kicked to the curb and forgotten about. So let's start with Chrissy Teigen. She and Nutmeg were together on Deal or No Deal, and Nutmeg sort of latched onto this relationship. She and Chrissy were besties. And that was at a time when Chrissy Teigen was the most successful of these Deal or No Deal girls. And the relationship was valuable to her. Subsequently, Nutmeg's star rose a bit higher, eclipsed Chrissy, and Chrissy was kicked to the curb. We hear nothing about her, and have not for many, many years. Chrissy Teigen, Markled. And next up, Lizzie Cundy. Now, she is a British television show hostess. Do they even call them hostesses anymore? I don't know what kind of program she is involved with in the UK, because obviously I don't get British television. Well, I don't watch television anyway. And if I did, I was going to say it wouldn't be British, but in fact it would probably be British first, because the Brits gave the world my very favorite show of all time back in the 60s. Anybody take a guess? Leave it in the comments. But if I told you, you would say, oh yeah, best show ever. So Lizzie Cundy was one of the people who befriended Nutmeg when she made her first forays into the UK husband hunting. And Lizzie was pretty straightforward about the fact that, Nutmeg was looking for a husband, preferably a titled British person. She was upfront about her agenda. So, yeah, Lizzie was useful in making some connections for her, showing her the ropes, that sort of thing, getting her feet wet in the UK. Probably less valuable than Nutmeg's Soho House connections, but valuable nonetheless. Goodbye, Lizzie. And next up, we have Gina Nelthorpe-Cohn. Now, Gina Nelthorpe-Cohn was the publicist who got Nutmeg many of her prestigious gigs. Got her in with the UN, these little advocacy appointments. And for Nutmeg, it was a one and done kind of thing. She was there for the photo ops. She was there to add it to her resume. She had zero commitment to any of this. But it was Nelthorpe-Cohn who arranged most of this for her. Brand deals, things that she could toss around casually in conversation. Oh, I'm a brand ambassador for such and so. And as soon as she began dating the sock puppet, which was her endgame, Nelthorpe-Cohn kicked to the curb. So yes, another of the Markled. And then we have Jessica Mulroney. And Jessica was matron of honor at Nutmeg's wedding. She was Nutmeg's stylist, although Nutmeg always made a point of saying, oh no, she was her own stylist. But in fact, Jessica Mulroney was widely known as Nutmeg's stylist when she was on Suits in Canada, when Mulroney's name was the one Nutmeg wanted to be associated with. So, oh yeah, she had no problem saying that Mulroney was her stylist then. But as her ship began to hit the high waves with the sock puppet, suddenly Mulroney was a friend but not a stylist, and eventually completely dumped. And I did a video about that because it was a pretty savage dumping. Jessica Mulroney got caught up in the backlash in the early days of the BLM movement, and perhaps backlash isn't even the right term. I think it was acting out more than anything else. Anyone who did not support Black Lives Matter. And there are a lot of people who didn't. But a lot of people, including people of color, who didn't. And as subsequent events would show us, there were some problems with that whole movement. Regardless, Jessica Mulroney was basically slapped back by a woman of color on social media because Jessica Mulroney failed to jump on that bandwagon. Mulroney made some unfortunate statements, and she did, no question about that, but Nutmeg dumped her like a hot potato. And it's very interesting because Nutmeg has plenty of scandals, let's just say, in her own past that obviously Mulroney was willing to walk away from in order to remain friends with Nutmeg, but it didn't cut both ways. So Mulroney was out. And those are our conspicuous ones. We also have Nutmeg Markled, her father, her sister, her brother, all of the relatives on that side of her family, as well as all of the relatives on the Raglan side of the family, with the exception of Doria. And in many cases, in fact, probably in most cases, from everything I've read about Nutmeg's childhood, these were all people who had been good to her. They had been kind to her when she was a child, and well, most of them did absolutely nothing to deserve the fate they got. Interestingly enough, the Netflix documentary Harry and Meghan, where they had Nutmeg's niece, this is Samantha's daughter, Ashley Hale, on the program. And Ashley, of course, is singing Nutmeg's praises, but Ashley wasn't invited to the wedding. And she said on the documentary, so if you don't believe me, just go check it out, that Nutmeg was told she couldn't by the royal family. Oh, you can't invite your niece Ashley. We think it would be odd if you invited her and didn't invite her mother. Apparently, no such nonsense ever came out of Buckingham Palace. Nutmeg did not want anyone from her family at that wedding. So Ashley was out. Markled. But then, here, this is the interesting twist. But then, when it became valuable for Nutmeg to have Ashley back in her life, oh well, come on back in. Sorry about that whole wedding thing, circumstances beyond my control. I gotta wonder if she sold the same bill of goods to Abigail Spencer, her new bestie. And Abigail was invited to the wedding, along with all of the other people Nutmeg knew from Suits, but none of them were invited to the evening reception, whereas total strangers George and Amal Clooney were. I wonder how she sold that one to Abigail. So, yeah, we've got instances of permanent markeling and markeling until they prove useful in the future. So this has been a very interesting ride to watch. Let's go over and talk about Enninful for a while. Now, the most recent episode with Edward Enninful was when Nutmeg went to him and said, "We want the front page of Vogue." And that wasn't happening. It was said in the media that that issue of Vogue had already been determined. It had been laid out. It was ready to go to press. But I wonder if that's really true, because the story of her previous entertaining adventure with Vogue, which goes back to the early days of her marriage with the sock puppet. This is when she appeared as guest editor for Vogue. And according to Tom Bower's book, she simply approached Edenfeld just without any introduction, just wandered in and said, "Hi, I want to be a guest editor for Vogue." And he said yes. And apparently he was, at least at the time, I have no idea what his opinion is now, at the time he was extremely favorably impressed, not just with Nutmeg, but with her achievement as a woman of color marrying into the royal family. I can easily understand that. He was a black man himself, son of immigrants. Maybe this was something that really resonated with him. But that relationship was very fraught, almost from the beginning, because of Nutmeg's strange demands while she was guest editing. They had to persuade her that she was not going to be putting her picture on the cover of Vogue, because naturally she wanted that. It's all about Nutmeg, after all. And she was, well, it looks like what she was doing was pretending to really edit the issue, when in fact she was making worthless suggestions that everyone ignored. And things started falling apart as the issue hit the stands, because Nutmeg wanted the US issue to have a full day's head start on the UK issue. And mind you, this is British Vogue. So, yeah, why should they be taking a back seat to the US? They objected. She was having the stories about this issue leaked to the press, because that's her style. We all know that. And what was happening was a lot of tension was building up in the Vogue offices, because Nutmeg just wasn't playing the game by the established rules. So I would say that what likely happened was Enenfeld was pretty much Markled after that initial issue of Vogue hit the newsstands, and this would have been around 2019. Hits the newsstands, he gets sort of semi-Markled, put on the back burner. Same thing that happened to Ashley, same thing that happened to Abigail Spencer. And then when he became useful again, gets pulled out, and it's like, "Hi, it's me, want to be back in my life, do me a favor." And it didn't work out. So now he's Markled again. I'm dying to see what happens to Abigail Spencer, because who knows, maybe she will be Markled again. And has anybody heard word one about Nutmeg's niece, Ashley Hale, who was dragged out of the closet when Nutmeg was working on Suits? Remember, she was playing a paralegal who was studying to be a lawyer, and Ashley was actually a lawyer, making her quite valuable. Then dumped, wasn't even invited to the wedding, and then pulled out when it became useful for the documentary. And now it seems she's dumped again. And you gotta wonder what's going on. So I would say we have a strong pattern here. And Nikki Pretty worked it out when she was 7 years old. So we see this again and again. And I have not even hit the things like Trevor Engelson. He got Markled, and in a very negative way. Apparently, instead of bothering to break up with Trevor, even by text, I mean, she just sent the rings back in a FedEx envelope with no explanation. Although they had only been married for a couple of years, they had been together for a decade. So everyone said that hit Trevor completely out of left field, and he took it hard. We have no idea what happened with Corey Vitiello. Nutmeg has the good fortune of having been involved with men who didn't trash her the minute she ended the relationship, although I would suspect her luck has come to an end, because I think the sock puppet is probably going to have a field day on her when that relationship cracks. And it looks like it's very close to cracking, so I guess we'll see. But this is the story of the Markling, and these are only the high-profile people. All of her high school friends, looks like at this point all of her college friends, all gone, all out of her life. Other than Abigail Spencer, there doesn't seem to be anyone in her life from her Suits days, and it doesn't look like I doubt she made any friends when she was in the UK, but if she did, they're not with her either. So this is a pattern, and the interesting thing is it is a lifelong pattern. It's a pattern of manipulation that started, according to Nikki Pretty, who was there when she was 7 years old. So I thought you'd find this all very interesting. I'm taking the 7-year-old Nikki Pretty's recollections in a very different direction on a future video, because I think it is very telling that by the time Nutmeg was 7, she was already clearly very damaged and very damaging. So we're going to hit that in a future video. But for now, this is what I have for you this evening. We're going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. As always, I am dying to read your comments. And in the meantime, have a terrific day.